can you tell us?
I can tell you that there has been a trace finding of a female fertility drug in a voluntary testing scheme, which is in addition to the UCAD testing scheme, the British Board testing scheme. So two separate schemes. So they both wanted to sign up to a voluntary scheme as well. At the end of August, beginning of September, there was a test taken from Benn, in which there was this female fertility drug. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name right now, but it's
clomiphene.
Yeah, exactly. And that was then relayed to us when those tests came back. The British Board follows UCAD, and the UCAD tests were presented to us as all negative, and that's the position that let's say from a legal, from a licensing point of view, that we have received. We took medical advice, because it's not just a case of if you have a substance, you have to also see it's a non-PED, but at the same time, it can raise the testosterone levels. The experts that we consulted couldn't see that it was giving an advantage. So on the basis of that, we discussed obviously straight away with the most important person from our side, and that's the athlete. And he was happy to continue. He spoke to Benn as well directly. There was a direct discussion between the two. I'm not privileged to that discussion. I wasn't part of that discussion. But at the same time, they had a personal discussion on it. It seemed to be a personal matter from Conor Benn. I can't comment more on that. At the same time, we have to focus on the show on Saturday, and we can't be distracted by anything. And this is
this is a bad substance. It's not up to the athletes to decide whether they want to ignore the rules, and they're prepared to do it because there's a huge fight with huge amounts of life-changing money for them, surely.
Those are the words of Cal Sutherland. He just informed us that Conor Benn has tested positive for a female fertility drug, which this drug can create higher levels of testosterone. It's not a PD or performance enhancing drug, but it is a banned substance. And me counterpunching this whole issue is they done it in a way that I've never seen it done before. Normally it's up to UCAD or BBBFC, British Boxing Board, right? And you would think that they would have the say over what is relevant and what is not, what's acceptable, what is not. And they talked to Chris Eubank. And I don't know what it is. Like he said, he didn't discuss that, but he wanted that money. And I think, at this point, that is the most bizarrest settlement that you could actually have. And if it's not a PD, it probably if it's on the banned substance list, it doesn't matter if it is or not. What matters is it's a banned substance. Now, the question is, why the hell would Conor Benn have a female fertility drug? And then another question you ask yourself is, how long has he been using it? You know what I mean? Because like with every athlete that gets popped with something, if it's a banned substance or a performance enhancing drug, you do have to ask yourself, honestly, did this motherfucker take this before, or did he just decide to experiment because he knew he needed an edge against a bigger guy like Chris Eubank, and therefore, let me try something that will work. Let me try something that's really undetectable, and let me try. Let's see what it does. And it just shows you that the money talks, bullshit runs a marathon, people. That's all it really shows us at this point, because Conor Benn has just got popped. If that was some lower fight that really nobody cared to watch or wasn't high demand like Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn, or Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn, you would have had a different result. You would have had, you know what, this fight is off due to the fact that Conor Benn tested positive for a banned substance. That's it. But then they asked Chris Eubank. That's just like, okay, well, why didn't you ask Oscar Rivas about the false findings or positive findings in Dillian White's substance, sample back in 2019? You know what I mean? They didn't even know about it. But in this case now, I don't know if the rules have changed or whatever it is. You know what I mean? I think that this should have been, I like that though, honestly. I mean, how protocol normally goes versus how it went then. It's politics and BS, but then it was almost like, hey, just ask, why don't you ask Chris? And Chris thought about that damn money. He thought about not fighting. He thought about everything else. And he said, you know what? I'll fight him anyway. But then if that happens, okay, if Conor Benn goes out there and smokes Chris Eubank, and then we see some type of performance we never seen by Conor Benn, at this point, though, he's damned if he does it, he's damned if he don't. Because, see, if he wins, people are going to question, like, yo, we already know you had that shit in your system. Then you start questioning how much of that in your system affected your performance. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because you're still labeled as a person that had to take something in order to get an edge. Okay, and that person just obliged because he wanted the money, which is Chris Eubank Jr. So it's a tricky thing. If Chris Eubank smokes him, like I think Chris Eubank is going to beat him, he's just bigger. And Chris Eubank has a good chin, and that's why I base it off of that. I don't think Conor will do that unless it's like some type of fight like Manny Pacquiao and Oscar De La Hoya. And we know what happened when Oscar came in at 146 and fought at a catchweight against Manny Pacquiao and got smoked. Right? But anyway, very, very interesting, bizarre news. You guys tell me what you think of Conor Benn failing or testing positive for a banned substance. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.